It's that time of the week when Stephen Cooper from the VLGA and I get to talk all things governance because it's the governance update. How did we ever come up with that name, Steve Cooper?
It was, I think, a session where we just really expanded our imaginatory powers, Chris. I took a lot, really. Creative types.
Yeah, someone hit on it just in someone hit on it just in a moment of inspiration.
Maybe someone just said, maybe we should do a governance update.
Actually, now that you say that, I think that's perhaps closer to what happened. All right, welcome one and all. We've got a lot to talk about as usual. It does seem it's a very vibrant space at the moment, Steve. And this just happened in the last couple of days. A couple of announcements from the state government here in Victoria about municipal monitors. Let's deal with these separately. So firstly, the government has, as I understand it from their official release, received a request from the Mayor and the CEO of Strathbogie Shire for some help with their governance practices. And the minister, or the acting minister, has appointed Janet Dorr as a monitor.
Has appointed the experienced Janet Dorr as a monitor. And you're quite right, Chris, that the Mayor and CEO have made that request. And good on them for doing that. The Mayor has history as a councillor, pre-amalgamation at an inner-city Melbourne council, and appears to have made a tree change. Apart from the Mayor, Chris Rayburn, the other councillors are all new at the task. And if they've sort of had the self-awareness and recognised that a monitor would be a good thing, and they've certainly publicly welcomed the appointment of Janet Dorr.
Yes, so as you understand it, the Janet's task is to help them understand roles and responsibilities, to monitor and ensure that appropriate governance practices are being employed, and to report back to the minister after 6 months.
Precisely. Yeah, couldn't have put it better, Chris.
And of course, Janet, most recently interim CEO at Ballarat, but has had a monitor role before at the rural city of Ararat. So as you say, experienced, she knows what she's about with this task.
She's diversified though, Chris. She's moved from the Western Highway to the Hume.
Indeed. So that's immediate. So Janet's going into Strathbogie in the monitor role, but the acting minister, Mary-Ann Thomas, has also announced this week that there will be a monitor put in place at South Gippsland Shire following the election. Now, of course, South Gippsland are going back to an elected council after a little over 2 years under administration. This is a sign that they really want to make sure that this new council gets off to the right start.
And it works. That's right, Chris. So, yeah, 12-month or an announcement by the acting minister, who's certainly doing more than just warming the seat, for a 12-month appointment. The announcement has not yet been made. It will be made at around the time of the election. So people who want to speculate about that sort of thing can have a few more weeks to do that. And it's an interesting time at South Gippsland because I have heard from the locals down there that even though nominations don't open until next week, there's already in the order of 15 people have publicly declared their intention to stand for the 9 seats, 3 wards of 3 councillors available at South Gippsland. Some would seek to be returning councillors, and some who are probably running on a new broom kind of platform.
I've noticed publicly some people have actually come out and said pre-existing or previous councillors should not be putting their hand up. I mean, that's one view, but the reality is there's nothing to stop them if they want to.
Chris, we've talked about this before. And if the legislators had meant for councillors of those councils that had been dismissed to not be able to stand, then they would have written the law accordingly, or certain actions would have been taken that haven't been taken. So there is certainly an entitlement for any returning councillor to stand. I know at Central Goldfields Shire there is more than one of the current group of councillors who is a returning councillor. and the voice of the people will prevail. So, the citizens of South Gippsland will get to vote for who they think is best.
History would tell us too, if you look at Brimbank and if you look at Central Goldfields, some previous councillors were returned when those councils went back to election. Correct me if I'm wrong, there was no monitor installed at the outset of those new terms. So is this setting a bit of a precedent or a signal as to the government's approach to this going forward, do you think?
That's a really good question, Chris, that I hadn't even thought of. Look, I don't know. Governments come and go and make the decisions that they think are best at the time. Clearly, Acting Minister Thomas and potentially Minister Lean have received advice that they think a monitor would be a good idea. It doesn't sound like a bad thing. One thing we do know, and you're probably better equipped than me to talk about this, Chris, is that a really key element of the role of the administrators is to set the council up with a strategic and policy framework that gives an incoming council the best chance of supporting their CEO to succeed.
Absolutely right. That is a key part, restoring that confidence, that public and community confidence in the council as an institution with good governance processes going forward. And the reason I was asking the question and thinking about it is you've got Casey and you've got Whittlesea under administration for another 3 and a bit years. Perhaps this is a way of looking to see whether this is a step that the government can ensure helps set those councils up for success when they return to elected councils.
And you're right, Chris, there's a certain logic to it because a monitor would be well positioned to provide feedback to government as soon as possible, not just in that kind of watchdog role, but also on the effectiveness of the steps that have been taken and the dynamics that will make for a successful new council. And we all know that strategy and policy is hard work and you don't get a lot of rewards for it as humans, in the kind of political fishbowl of councils. It's much more fun to be having argy-bargy.
That's one way of looking at it, yes. All right, we'll watch that one.
Said with tongue firmly in cheek.
We'll watch that. Argy-bargy, there's our word for the day. Thank you. Or is it 2 words? Hyphenated? Is it hyphenated? Argy-bargy?
The crossword that I do has been a bit inclined lately to have 10 letters for what I know to be 2 words of 5. But anyway, let's not go there.
Okay, all right. Let's research that at a later date. I want to go north of the border now into New South Wales. Some interesting developments this week. As we've mentioned on the program before, the council elections have been deferred for a second time, back 3 months now to the first week of December. What this means is that some councils have mayoral terms and deputy mayoral terms expiring. Most of them are rolling over the mayor and the deputy mayor, if I can put it that way, for that 3-month period, as has happened this past week or so in Dubbo. Not the case in Inner West, Steve. Have you seen this?
I have, Chris, but you know a bit more about it than me. What I do know is it's got a bit messy in Inner West.
It has gotten a little bit messy. I was just calmly sitting, browsing my Twitter feed while I was watching something mindless on the telly on Tuesday night and came across a rather extraordinary thread. I've got to call it what it is, a bit of a rant on Twitter from the outgoing mayor, as it turns out, Darcy Byrne at Inner West. It's still there for anyone to have a look at. Effectively, what the Inner West Council has decided to do is change the mayor and the deputy mayor for the next 3 months. Councillor Byrne seems to think that's a poor decision, called it a backroom deal, even says in the middle of a crisis, it's not the time to be changing mayor. But change they have, and there's a new mayor to take them through into December. I think it's worth a read.
It's a cracking read, Chris, and it's worthwhile also going to the backstory, which is that there's been conduct issues at the council where the mayor's been inveigled into those conduct issues, and going further to what you said, that I think the mayor has pointed to the fact that in the middle of a COVID pandemic, continuity of the mayoralty is very important. I wouldn't presume, Chris, to talk about the local government system in Victoria, but one thing I do know, in New South Wales, but one thing I do know about the local government system in Victoria is that emergency management arrangements should be thoughtfully considered and locked down to the point that what is going on at the political or elected level should not make a difference to the effectiveness of those emergency management arrangements. And if they are making a difference, then maybe the emergency management arrangements aren't what they could be.
Just one more thing on Inner West before we leave it. As I've reported recently on the roundup, that council, when it goes to election in December, is asking its residents a separate question, and that is whether they support the de-amalgamation of Inner West back to the original 3 councils that formed Inner West. Marrickville is one, Leichhardt is one, the name of the other is escaping me. But I know you're quite interested to see what happens with Leichhardt.
Well, actually, there's 2 reasons, Chris, and one is that you may regret that prognostication earlier that argy-bargy is the word of the week, because I think trifurcated is making a late run.
Okay, there's another.
The other thing, of course, is that sort of scholars or students of local government who of a particular age might recall the fabulous documentary Rats in the Ranks about the machinations leading to the election of mayor at the former city of Leichhardt, which may again be a city, involving a colourful fellow called Larry Hand, who was a mayor for multi-terms there. The thing about Rats in the Ranks, Chris, you might recall, it's a fly-on-the-wall doco where the councillors became so accustomed to the cameras being in the room that they were very candid, and perhaps on reflection might not have been as candid as they actually were. Thanks for the late homework. If anyone wants a copy, it's on the Film Australia website at $19.95 for personal use.
We did have a quick look to see if it's available for streaming, because I'm embarrassed to admit I've never seen it. I've heard about it, but it's not something I've ever been able to sit down and watch. So I've got to rely on having watched Grassroots, which was, of course, fabulous as well.
Oh, no. A good bit of parody, Grassroots, but Rats in the Ranks, the lessons live on, Chris. It's timeless.
Now, talking about mayors in New South Wales, just a quick comment. They've been a bit miffed that the Premier of New South Wales, Gladys Berejiklian, won't meet with them about COVID. They've really doubled down on this, by the way. They made the request through Local Government New South Wales. The Premier referred them to the Office of Local Government, or the Minister for Local Government. LG New South Wales and others have come out and said, no, we believe we should have the opportunity to meet with the Premier. In Victoria, I think it'd be pretty rare that you'd get an audience with the Premier, even if you were a large number of mayors, wouldn't you think, Steve?
I would have thought so as a general rule, Chris. The thing that struck me on this particular topic is a reminder that stakeholder management is a skill. And if you're having a meeting, the idea of a meeting is for both parties to advance their respective causes, advance understanding, come away with a bit of dignity. And I just wonder at times whether the moment you've had to go public and say we can't get a meeting, in fact, it seems like both parties are sort of diminished by that, and that generally it's a good idea for councillors to work closely with their officers around how stakeholder management is done.
I notice in the midst of all of this, a press release from the Office of Local Government in New South Wales pointing out how council mayors and general managers have been joining together for a series of ongoing webinars organised by the Minister for Local Government to hear the latest COVID-19 developments from key government ministers and senior officials. I think that's their answer.
I think that was the forum. That was what you got.
I do wonder whether they call those webinars LG Connect or something, because I've noticed we were the first. I've got to say, we were the first.
And there's been quite a few. Imitation's the finest form of flattery, Chris. And if there's not the word connect in those meetings that they've been having, maybe that is something to complain about.
All right. Again, just one to reference in passing. This is fairly complex. I don't want to get into a lot of detail about it, but there has been some press down in Tasmania about the appointment of the new general manager of the Huon Valley Council. Expected, this is Jason Brown, expected to take up the role later this month. But there's been some allegations about conflicts of interest and confidentiality, etc., which I'm making no judgment on because I have got no idea, but it's not a good look when you see this whole process being played out in the press in this way.
Not at all, Chris, and I think anyone that's interested, it would be a worthwhile exercise to Google Huon Valley Council and probably tick the box that says last month. And you're right, the two issues that have emerged are an allegation of conflict of interest, which further information has been requested, and I'd be really looking forward when that request has been finalised and information is certain for us to talk about that further. The other one is an issue around confidentiality, and I thought a nice reminder, because it does appear to be on the public record that the names of multiple candidates for the role have been released, and I think, speaking generally, the names of applicants for any position ought to be confidential. And it's a nice reminder, I guess, Chris, of the regime that we've got in Victoria, where there are a raft of categories of material that are confidential, none of which are a particular surprise. All those magic words, any matter which a councillor ought reasonably know should be confidential. And I would have thought that names of candidates would be right up there.
I would have thought so too. All right, as you say, you can do a Google if you want to find out some more about that. A couple of other notes, Steve. Local Government Professionals Australia, noting they have a new national president in Jonathan Throssell, who's also the CEO of the Shire of Mundaring. Am I saying that right? Mundaring, do you know?
No, I don't. Western Australia?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. And a new CEO of the Local Government Professionals Australia in Catherine Carter, who's coming from Engineers Australia, and we wish her all the best.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, some other classified notices before we finish up. Fast track for mayors and councillors. It's coming up very quickly.
It's on the 1st of October, Friday the 1st of October, Chris. And we weren't going to run it at the start of the year, but because Fast Track 1 was so successful, we've gone again. We've made the call to go online because it quite obviously can't be face-to-face, and engaged a professional virtual production company to support us in that process, and we are really excited about the look and feel of this event. It will go for most of the day. 3 high-power panels, and some of the same people. Every panel is different. Every panel, the topic is now about the context of where are we now, 12 months in. So our first panel will be unpacking what's happened in the last 12 months. Nolene Duff, not only an administrator, but a particularly experienced CEO. Sarah Rye from Justicia Lawyers and the Local Government Inspectorate. We will talk about the transition for councillors from that role of preparing strategy with all of that work that's been done in the last 12 months into what does it take to move to the implementation and oversight role that's really important in year 2, with Nicola Wass from RPS Consulting, Kate Redwood, former councillor at Melbourne and Hepburn Shire, and the rather excellent Andrew Day, CEO of Manningham Council.
You've really struggled with this panel, haven't you?
Oh, well, you just wait. Third panel, you can talk about all of that, but fundamentally it's about people, and sometimes we get disappointed by what happens. And we've got the rather excellent Ian McCormick from Canada, who's written a fabulous book, who's driving the grader that I keep talking about, because Ian understands the dynamics, which is good. Melissa Scadden, lawyer and dispute resolver extraordinaire, and yeah, we did scrape the barrel. A bloke called Chris Eddy, who I think, Chris, your capacity, how would I describe this nicely? The fact that you are a bit of a social butterfly means that you have done a bunch of work at a range of councils, and you've seen a lot of stuff and are seeing the patterns. So we're really looking forward to that.
I wondered how you're going to justify my inclusion of that. No reflection on the other two. They're very, very, very good.
They are very good. Well, in fact, we thought that they are both good enough
that we can just fill the last spot with anyone. I'm with you. I understand. Seriously, looking forward to that on the 1st of October. And I understand that there's strong interest and strong registrations already. So that's
well, we've got registrations coming in. It'll be designed in a way where we're very clear on the timetable. It'll be a bit of fun too. Acclaimed actor Chris Connolly will do some work just to get people thinking in a different frame. So you come away not just having heard a bunch of people speak, but, our real aim is to run an event where people can, councillors, particularly leaders, those with a leadership role either formally or informally, and councils can be as effective as possible.
Now, next week, Steve, I'm going to spend some quality time with three fine people, one of whom you've mentioned already, in preparation for the next live panel under the VLGA Connect banner, and that's on electing the mayor, because it's that time of year.
Yeah, and we got Ian McCormick back for that one as well, because Ian's next book is around the characteristics of effective mayors. And I understand you also found an effective mayor, Chris.
Yes, Kim O'Keefe, the wonderful Kim O'Keefe from Greater Shepparton City Council, is going to be joining us on that panel.
And Kim's had a bit on her plate in the last few weeks, and well done to the folk at Shepparton in terms of how they've responded to the COVID outbreak there too, by the way, Chris. I think that's a fabulous story. And we've also got, speaking
Tony
of
Rownick,
managing partner of Hunt & Hunt, who of course is a former mayor at the Nillumbik Shire. So that notion, and I've been saying for a long time, Chris, that the Local Government Act is framed in a way now which gives councils a job description for the role of mayor. So again, as this first year has rolled around, thinking through that decision for councillors becomes very important. And what date was that on?
That is on the 23rd of September, which is a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And you've just also reminded me, we've been very remiss and not mentioned Hunt & Hunt Lawyers as the sponsor of this program, for which we're really, really grateful to have them on board.
Too true. So, and just ducking back to those events too, Chris, of course, both of those can be booked through the events page on the VLGA website.
And Steve, looking ahead to next week, you've been chatting with Lucy Dalton, the Director of Policy and Strategy at Local Government Victoria, and she's going to join us on the program.
Looking forward to that, Chris, because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but in the culture space in local government, there is a bit going on. And in particular, we're going to talk with Lucy about where we're at with the culture review for local government. And I think we've talked before about the importance for councils to consider this topic. So when PricewaterhouseCoopers, the consultants, come knocking at the door, you've got some good responses to make this a worthwhile exercise.
Looking forward to that. So we'll have Lucy on the show next week. Steve, enjoy the rest of the week, what there is of it, and we look forward to catching up with more governance news. Busy time. I'm sure we'll have lots more to sift through next week.
Thanks, Chris.
Steve Cooper is the Chief of Staff at the VLGA, and that's the governance update in the can for the 10th of September, with our thanks to Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. See you again soon on VLGA Connect.